Hi, I'm Anu Rathninde, President of Asia Pacific Johnson Controls. At Johnson Controls, our mission is to make buildings smarter, healthier, and more sustainable. When we speak of sustainability, every business leader today trying to make an economic success, achieve financial goals without harming the environment and making the whole society a better place. These are challenges that leaders discuss today all the time. Today, we have a great opportunity to be discussing this topic with some of the greatest minds of the industry. Let me now invite our guest today, Andy To, Managing Director of U.S. Green Business Council Asia Pacific, Professor Ben Shenglin, Dean Zhejiang International Business School and Dean of Academy of Internet Finance at Zhejiang University, and Freck Qin, Principal and Director of Workplaces at Gensler. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Ben. Ben, recently you published a paper on sustainability at the age of platforms. You discuss about the platform economy, and then you discuss about the sustainable and unsustainable production and consumption that is driven by platform economy. Tell us more about where is the gap? How do we bridge this gap? And the second part of the question is also, do we have enough belief? Is it clear that these platforms are leading us to a sustainable world?
First of all, thank you for having me. I think the paper you referred to, we actually did that in 2019. Okay, at the time when everybody was so concerned about the digital platforms, are they doing good for the society? Our finding in that paper, first and foremost, is in many ways they are improving, okay, the social equality, for example, and in many cases they also improving the environmental side. But in the meantime, of course, there are also some challenges. When we look at the sustainability, we look at the three aspects. The economic sustainability, because the digital platforms sometimes can create certain, say for example, monopolistic situation. It could disrupt the current, say, tax system, for example, digital tax, where you should actually be taxed, for example. And also, of course, the second aspect is like what we call like a social sustainability. In that, there are certain challenges, for example, the third-party workers, like a DD driver, for example, is that an employee, does it enjoy certain protections, for example? Right. So that's also one of the things what we call like a social sustainability. And of course, thirdly, which is more related to environmental sustainability. And you could imagine that we do, buy a lot of stuff, and many of the things come in very big packages. So the packagings, are causing certain, negative, impact on the society, on the environment, but also even the logistics side, because the delivery, the delivery right. drivers, they are creating additional, say, congestion to a certain extent. Okay. So these are like, three areas. But in the meantime, what we have noticed is that there are things that, first of all, these digital platforms, they are doing better, given, they know that if they want to be sustainable, if they want to be, making a lot more contribution to the sustainability in the world, so they are making, for example, some internal, guidelines, for example, to make sure that they deal with various challenges I mentioned, better. Also, externally, there are certain rules and regulations which have been put in place. For example, talking about like data protection for the users data, and talking about, say, what are the standards we should actually put in place. For example, should we push the drivers too much, in essence. So there are quite a bit of things, that we have noticed that. And the good thing is that, many industry players, they are doing even better in kind of like stating to the world they are serious about sustainability. And they are focused a lot more on so-called like social responsibility. Sustainability is a key part of the CSR or ESG. So I think it's very exciting, and once not just the platforms, but also the sellers, as well as the consumers on the side. If we look at how we, can join hands to contribute to the sustainability cause, I think that's also something that I think that digital platforms, they are doing a lot better job than a few years back as well.
So absolutely. It's the economic sustainability, it is the environmental sustainability, and ultimately the society, the humanity. We have a better planet for us to live, and many generations to come. It's interesting you mentioned about digital platforms, and you talk about in your paper that today sellers, few clicks of a button, can sell their products anywhere in the world, and consumers have unprecedented choices and convenience that comes with it. The expanding on these platforms and technology, China has declared dual carbon goals, and that is by 2030 or earlier reach the carbon peak, and 2060 or earlier reach carbon neutrality. So technology play an enormous role in this. And now we live in fourth industrial revolution, connecting assets digitally, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learnings. So we live in that world in digital. I think if you look at the carbon emissions today, 40% of carbon emissions globally coming from buildings, and in China it's 50%. Exactly. So 50% of carbon emissions coming from buildings, so there is no decarbonizing the world without decarbonizing the buildings. So Freck, Gensler is one of the leading architecture firms, and you started your career as a designer, and you are helping design these buildings. And quite frankly, the Johnson Controls Asia Pacific headquarters here in Shanghai was a great piece of design by Gensler as well. So how do we get this technology and the early designs play a bigger role towards the sustainability and making these dual carbon goals and as a whole sustainability a reality?
It's interesting. We are the world, the biggest design firm of the world, and we design about more than 6,000 projects every year. And actually, Gensler, as a design firm, we signed the Paris Agreement in 2015. So it's very early, and we announced our Gensler Cities Climate Challenge in 2019. So we really help our clients to achieve their carbon goal. At the same time, we also set up our goal to be make all of our buildings to net zero carbon in 2013. So this is our goal and it's our roadmap. And as you mentioned, 50% of the carbon emissions comes from the building. So we feel we have the responsibility, but we also have the capability to help our client to achieve their goals. And as we know, in the entire carbon, for the building, 72% of the energy comes from operation. So we really work together with JCI for your headquarters. We can save, I remember we can save 44% of the energy through the operation, and we can reduce 42% of the water during our operation. So this is a big goal for us, both of us. And how to improve this for the operation carb energy? Actually, I think we have to make the right, the project sizing. It's not like, bigger is the better. The right size is very important. And the second one, we have to significantly reduce the energy during each, operation year. And we have to, for the on-site renewable energy production, it's also very important. And we also have to provide the flexibility for purchasing the renewable energy. So this is for operation part. For the embodied energy, actually, it's also very important. As a design firm, we have to select the right material to make it happen, right? We also have to help our client to achieve their goals, and we have to work together with all the parties for the project during the entire life cycle, because we did more than every year in the past 5 years. Every year we design more than 1 billion square feet projects all over the world. So we can't achieve it only by ourselves. We have to work together with all parties, our clients, the vendors, the suppliers, the general contractors. We have to work together as a team to achieve the goal together. Yeah.
I think that's a great point on how every players in this ecosystem work together. So we will get deeper into that discussion later. So on the design piece, your point about, it's ultimately it's all about energy savings,
yes,
right? And you save energy when you have high efficient equipments, because people are going to need the comfort. They would need their buildings to be healthier and are more comfortable. And to do that, there's going to be more energy. So then how do we make these equipments more energy efficient?
Yes.
And then how do we connect them in the digital platforms like Johnson Controls Open Blue system?
Yes.
And then driving do that. And then, of course, you add a renewable component then, right? That's ultimately the path to net zero. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think since we talk about everything is about energy savings and making environment a better place, I think this is very well known ultimate test and a measure of sustainability decarbonization comes into very well known certificate is the leadership in energy and environment design, or LEED, that U.S. Green Business Council, and that you have over 30 years of experience in this space.
In buildings.
In buildings, 30 years ago. And you have seen this evolution, how it is coming up. So, and you have met many clients around, and there are different kind of, not like Johnson Controls, we're in building space, so we have our headquarters building, but not every client is in building space, because they're doing something else, in a hospital or university or recreational center or some. So their expertise on buildings may not necessarily be there to understand these things. So how would you advise and coach your clients to achieve this sustainability and net zero?
It is very interesting questions. We always think that we talk a lot about carbon neutrality. People know a lot about that. But if you go to some survey outside the built environment or outside the carbon circle, the general public, when you talk to them about climate change, global warming, the first thing pop up is plastic, recycle, not building. Therefore, we may be over messaged within our sector and under messaging in the carbon circle itself, beyond the carbon circle. I give you a very interesting example. I talked to a gentleman in Operation Carbon, talking about the biggest challenge in China. I said cooking. because everyone talking about how to decarbonize building, to talk about electrifications, digitalizations. I think in China the biggest source of operating carbon is cooking, and it will never be changed. We still like wok chi, bao cha, and that cooking style. I posted a message in my LinkedIn. I feel my old friend working in a hotel as chef, Andy, you are right. We will never give up, the define cooking process.
Yeah.
That's something I share this example is we still have a very big gap between knowing and doing. We know how to decarbonize building, but actually I have to say in the last 5 to 10 years I can't see too many breakthrough. The adaptation is not because there's no solution available, but the client and user are quite reluctant to take new technology. I always share example. You both powerful Shanghai Tower. I have luck to talk to Mr. Gensler going back to 10 years ago in Shanghai Tower. It's still half done, and he said, why the building chips, 120 degrees, because it quickly reduces the window so that I can do a lot less in the structure, reduce the embodied carbon. Why I do double panel? It quickly reduces the heat load. I can reduce the operation carbon. Perfect. But after that, frankly speaking, we can't see too many owners willing to take that, breakthrough, have the bro, have the guts to do that. That's my little observation.
So a lot of talking, less of doing. So
I trust 2023 is a year of how. A lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of owners, they already come up and pledge for carbon neutral. But how? I think it's time to ask how and when.
Right. I think the wisdom that you bring in, spending over 30 years in building, and also the discussions like this, and then expanding and sharing with the broader community, I believe we have a role to play in it, right? I think to your point about, yes, we talk about it, but it's also our job to get a broader audience and a public, business owners, policymakers to embrace this, and its sustainability and decarbonization. I think it's a massive urgency. We have to do it to save the planet, and at the same time, it also actually a great business opportunity as well. So I think we have a role to get the entire ecosystem coming together. I think changing the topics along the same lines to a different direction on urban development, and urban development has given us lots of challenges, but at the same time, urban development is also the solution to many of the problems and the development of the society. So and we see that I mean, even in China, more and more city development projects going on, and big cities are getting bigger, and more cities coming out, and now they're coming more green development, more sustainable urban development. Professor Ben, you have spent a lot of time in industry, and now you are leading one of the top business schools in China. So what is your take on this urban development, and how do we get the ecosystem players to come together and embrace this green urban development?
Okay. And as you right point out, I know the cities sometimes are getting too big. Okay, so that's some of the challenges we have. And what I see is that the carbon certainly is one, is an issue, is a challenge for us. The cost of living in cities is also becoming a very serious issue, because of housing.
Right.
So many young people, couldn't even afford, to have a proper career, So and of course you have many cities, they almost have the similar strategy. you look from one city to another, they look the same. So they don't have their own character, not enough at least. So these are like some of the challenges that we face, and how shall we do it? I think you mentioned better planning, for example, and the urban planning authorities. I think I generally are doing a good job in China. Okay, but of course we can do better. I think that part. I think especially when we talk about like Yangtze River Delta region, that's where we are. You have like 250 million people. So many cities. Shanghai is obviously the center, but you also have many other cities around Shanghai in this region. Great connection in terms of high-speed trains. But why, for example, where I am? I'm based in Haining, in Zhejiang, which is basically next door to Shanghai. And these kind of cities can have a unique role to play. So some diversity. So you don't have to. You don't want to be everything to everybody. So every city needs to figure out their own character, their own focus, their own positioning, so that they can have a more sustainable strategy. I would say, and also in terms of like participation from the general public. You talked about ecosystem,
Right.
So again, thank you. Academia is part of the ecosystem. Okay. So we can, also industry association is part of the ecosystem. So it's not just the public authorities, but also the general public, as well as obviously the private sector. So these are the things that we need to do more raise the awareness. Not just you're aware, but also willing and also able to do that. So these are the things that I think the ecosystem partners could do. The other thing I was actually preparing for potentially this question, I thought there are a few things that we could, figure out for urban planning to have sustainable urban planning. I would say, there are a few A's, what I call, say amenities, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure that the schools, the hospitals, restaurants, right. They are there. And then you got to have availability of, careers, industry, job opportunities. Because if you don't have the job opportunities, you don't have the young people, the general the growth problem. Then you also have an access issue, means accessibility of the city center, for example, and the city from other countries, other cities coming to your city as well. So basically, smart transportation systems as well. And finally, I would say is what I call affordability. As I mentioned earlier, if the housing is so expensive, you can't crowd out all the young, talented people who may not be able to help with the city.
You don't want to have it like Hong Kong.
I try to avoid naming it. And
but it's so obvious, the affordability.
So the final A, avoid trying to be everything to everybody.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You need to find your niche, your strategy, right? And that's important.
Right. I think this is an amazing discussion. So sustainability it's not just applying technologies and decarbonizing, even though that's a massive urgency for us to do it now, and also making sure that when we do this urban planning, urban development, you talk about individuals having their identity, keeping their protection. Making people feel that they don't have to change themselves and they can still be themselves. I think at least much deeper level of sustainability we're discussing here. I think you're absolutely right. It reminds me of a little experience that I thought I would share. Several years ago, I had a manufacturing plant in Shanghai with about 5,000 people working there. And one of the message sense that we had is that they're not happy with the food.
That's important.
They're not happy with the
Chinese.
food. In the skip level meetings, I heard that. So I said, let's do a survey around it. And when we find out, actually, we have these immigrant workers that are coming from different parts of China to work there. So they all like to have a different diversity of the food, but we overlooked that. We overlooked that, and we started serving standard Shanghainese cafeteria food. So then we mix it with the Sichuan cuisine and so on, and different options. And actually, it really improved the employee satisfaction and motivation. So when we're talking about sustainability, I think it is everyone's ability to preserve their culture and so on. It's beyond beyond the decarbonizing. It is making sure that the society and everyone is moving in the right direction and happily and motivated. Thank you. So I think extending on that urban development. We partnered with Beijing Municipal Administrative Council, and then we introduced district heating and cooling in Beijing, and that's we used the heat pump technology, and that we used the geothermal energy instead of the regular energy sources. And that can provide cooling during summer and heating during winter. You're able to save about 40,000 tons of carbon emissions, and that's equal to about planting 100,000 trees. So there's so much work on a city planning as well. How do we participate on this technology space and making sure that, again, get everyone involved in it. Because it's the policymakers, it is academia, it is institutes, and it is private sector coming together. So you mentioned earlier, Freck, about the ecosystem, how do we get together? So what is your experience? What is your advice? How do we come together?
First of all, I think, as you mentioned, Andy, I feel for me, people start to talking about this is also very important.
Yes.
As a great, as a global design firm, we feel like 10 years before, it's difficult to tell our clients, say, you need to do like LEED. Because they will say, why? And they will say what this means, and why we need to spend like 20% more of the money about these kind of things. But now in Great China region, I think more and more people, they already realize what LEED means. Why we need to do the LEED. So as an industry leader, we don't need to educate them anymore, say what LEED means. But at this moment, I totally agree with you. They still talk too much. For them, LEED actually sustainable is like a thing nice to have. We hope after another maybe 5 years, we together work together as an ecosystem, people will feel like sustainable will be a thing must to have. So then we don't need to waste the time to educate them. But we, I think we as an industry leader, we have the responsibility to push our client to a little bit more. I think this is the things we have to do. And the first thing I think we need to leadership the industrial or the industrial partners, because we can't do the things by ourselves. As I mentioned, we have to work together with different partners to achieve the goal. And we need to make them realize, say, this is the goal for all the parties to achieve. This is the key things. As I mentioned, we need to have our clients, we need to have our vendors, suppliers, GCs. They all feel this is the things must do. Then the entire industry can improve. For example, we work together with Microsoft. They have their sustainable goal. It's even higher than LEED requirement.
Much higher.
Much more higher. But when we design the space, it's very difficult to find the right material according to their requirement, their design guideline. The design guideline actually is also provided by Gensler. We work together with them. So we have to talk to all the vendors, say, can you achieve these certifications? How you can achieve that? We worked closely with the lead consultant to achieve the goals. So they have to be involved in. And I feel in the past 3 years, more and more vendors, they are involved in. They are willing to do the test, get the certification, then they can improve, say, yes, we can achieve Microsoft goals. So this is the first thing. The second thing is we have to select the right material, right? It's also the key things for when we design the building, right? So this is the things we can't achieve without the support from all the vendor or from all the supplier, right? We are partner. They are not only supplier, they are partner with us. The third one is very important is we need to measure all the impact we achieve. Because if we talk too much, but we don't have the data to tell our clients, say, you know, you can achieve 1, 2, 3, 4 within your design, within your operation, then it's difficult to push the client go to the next step. And the fourth one is we have to design with the, you know, the technology. We in Gensler, we develop a lot of, you know, G platform, G frozen, these kind of things to measure all these impacts through our design. And we use Revit to design the space. Everyone can measure all the impact through the BIM system. So this is the things we can achieve the sustainable goals together with the client. So I think we already achieved the goal, say people talking about the things, then we need to work together with them to tell them how we can achieve. This is the next step we can do.
That's one of the things probably you mentioned about the lead.
Right.
Can it become an industry standard?
Yeah.
So it's required.
Yeah.
It's not just nice to have right now.
I tend to agree and disagree. It is quite successful in China.
Yeah.
And people always saying that, you know, Andy, you know, how can you run this, you know, brand, this logo so successfully? Does any government subsidies, any government regulation? I said, no. We sell it, we sell this idea in a commercial way. We prove the value of it.
Yes.
And sometimes, you know, people will think that, you know, Andy, is it very difficult to achieve lead? And one reporter asked me for a building 20 years old in Beijing, and they just got the lead patio through operation and maintenance. I said, there's no difficulties. We just a language, you know, sharing with people what you have accomplished.
Yes.
But by the way, you know, Hailing campus, the
Is
library certified.
Yeah,
under LEED.
indeed. Thank you.
So, Freck, you mentioned about Microsoft and Johnson Controls also is extremely proud to partner with Microsoft campus in Beijing and to achieve the goals. And actually, during the CIIE, and I met with the CEO of Microsoft in China, and we gave the Pioneer Award for OpenBlue. It's using the Johnson Controls digital platforms there. So it's great partnership with us as well. So you mentioned about collaboration, right? So that's the ultimate answer. We can't be like we try to get government approval, we try to get supplier to do this, and one customer. I think those days are over now. Now we can't work on these handshake agreements, but now it's all about collaboration.
Yes.
That how do we work together because we can't be good at everything. So we can't be good at everything. We're good at what we do, and then we need to collaborate with others who are good at what they do. So Andy, again, going back to your experience and I think your passion about making even a lead, you believe that there's good and bad about making it mandatory versus giving an option, because when you keep it an option, because people want to do it, now you have to do it. So how do we get everyone to collaborate?
Share the passion. You know, people always question us about, you know, dancing here and there, you know, putting the stage, you know, presenting the pledge. But, you know, we want to celebrate their success. We want to share their passion with their stakeholders. That's something, you know, we like to do. And previously, we did it, you know, mainly in office building, Shanghai Tower, Super Towers, Grade A building. But right now, we are doing in factory in Zhejiang. We are doing that in a go down in Hainan. And I think engaging different stakeholders, not only the real estate people, are important. Because although we are within the real estate sector, we think that real estate is a big. But you know, if you count the number of people being involved in the real estate industry, maybe only 5%, 10%. We need to make sure that the people walk in McDonald's know that it's a certified store. We don't think that, you know, it's very important to us, but they can reach the young people. They can reach, you know, people, you know nothing about building. That's something, you know, we want to do more in the coming years. And that's what, you know, Adu said, you know, we need to collaborate with more people, students, you know, drivers, and make sure that they know the importance. And because they know the importance, then they have say to their suppliers. You know, they're spending money on internet. They're spending money in renting premises. And then they will say, hey, what's your company vision on reducing the carbon? Not necessarily to get a LEED building, but give me some statement about that. That's important.
I think if you look at any I mean, we talk about organizations, we talk about companies, but ultimately they're all people. And they're all people, and all those people are led by leaders. So end of the day, it is leaders who have to lead this transition. Right? I mean, I think we all agreed technology is already there. With the existing technology, we can already do a lot. Of course, new technologies can do more, but already with existing technologies, we can achieve more than 50% what we want to achieve already. So then, I think leadership has a big role to play. Yes, leaders have to deliver every quarter financial performance. Yes, leaders have to manage short-term and long-term. But that's why we are called leaders, to manage all those. Right? So it's not but if leaders, you know, they kick the can and leave this to next year, it's not going to happen. So Professor Ben, you are making leaders, and it's one of the top universities in China, and you're making. How do we make sure that the leaders, the upcoming leaders, as well as well-seasoned leaders in practice today, how do they embrace this so that this become part of the DNA? And they're not doing it because there's pressure, there's a requirement, but it's who they are, become its value system.
Well, you know, it's as Andy was talking about, you know, education to a certain extent, so that they are aware the benefits, aware that big trends, and aware that some peer pressure is also important, And what we also believe is that the leadership in terms of thought leadership, that, you know, that's where, you know, academia can come into, you know, play a role, you know, that, you know, that's the big trends that are transforming, for example, the world. We are talking about, say, as I mentioned earlier, economic sustainability, because you need to make sure that other stakeholders are available, you know, convinced that it's not really just a loss-making thing. It is actually economically beneficial and positive, contributing to their long-term, you know, growth plan as well. And of course, the so-called like industry, the technology leadership, of course, it's already there in many ways. But really, the top leaders, and like yourselves, come to, you know, spend some time with, you know, say the younger students, because they can not just their own behavior, they can influence their parents, the people around them. They are actually even more powerful, more effective in making all these kind of decisions. So I would say the leadership is on a daily basis in that sense, and spend more time on the younger generation.
Can I echo, you know, what Ben said, you know, the pandemic gave me some insight. You know, people talk about triple bottom line a lot. You know, poverty, people, you know, panic. Normally they present the cases three circles overlapping each other. But the pandemic gave me another, you know, perspective. I think the pen is a big circle. The people is a middle circle, and the poverty is a small circle. Just like lockdown, the planet died. Where's the people? but the people being locked down, how can the company make profit? Therefore, there are a lot of overlapping circle. There are circle, bigger circle, smaller circle, and smaller circle. And without the big circle intact, people will not profit, will not be there. That's something I want to echo. But the second point is about the young people. I always pitch the leaders about sustainability, why ESG, and I share 2 surveys by very famous international consultant firm. They survey the millennial and Gen Z, and they are the most powerful upstream leaders and consumer. Okay, and one survey said they are willing to take lower salary to join a company with good sustainability strategy.
Right. That's true.
The second survey is by a consuming company. People, the young generation, are willing to spend more to buy goods or service from a good company. I said if you are in the modern world competing in services, talents lead you to be green or sustainable, and your customer lead you to be green and sustainable. What's your excuse? What's the excuse? There's no excuse for you to walk away from these 2 topics.
I totally agree. Sorry, I totally agree what you're talking about. I mean, we design a lot of campus headquarters for the client in Greater China region, and we realized in the past 3 to 4 years, not only these global clients talking about ESG, talking about sustainable. Also the local client, like China Merchant Bank, like Bank of Shanghai, these companies, they all care about ESG. So when we design, when we design the campus headquarters, usually we will do the vision section with their leadership. What's their goal, right? And when we talk about ESG, they say, we also care about ESG. And as you mentioned, the young generation, they are willing to work with these great companies who care about ESG, and they feel belonging. They are so proud of what their company did, and during the talent war, it's very important for these, great companies to attract the people with their ESG goals.
Just like what you are, Gensler.
Right.
Yes. The platform is very important, right? If the employee trust what you did as a company, they will feel the belonging. Then you can keep your talent as long as possible.
I like the quote. One of my colleagues always give a quote about ESG and balance sheet. He said the financial statement is telling the strength and muscle of a company. ESG report reflect their character, their soul and heart. Therefore, no matter employee and customer right now looking not only your financial strength, they're also looking at your character, your soul.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we all agree the young generation is not the problem. Young generation is the solution.
We are the problem.
It's because of the habit we have.
Because it's how we grew up and the times. So I think young generations of students, they truly have embraced what sustainability is and what value system, to your point, it is. I mean, the sustainability, I think, remember probably a decade and a half ago when everyone talked about, it was kind of a nice thing to have, when it was a title that was required and so on. But it's not about having great mission statements and PowerPoints and so on, but with the internet age, the young generation, they're really going deeper into finding out the soul of the leaders. It's the soul of the leaders. It's not this big talks and so on, but ultimately, what kind of leader we have, what kind of true value system this company and culture have. I think we can continue this dialogue until the dinner time. It's not just a tea time, but I think it was a fascinating dialogue and great insights. I think we should continue this dialogue and bringing all the expertise from policymakers to academia, to institutes and designs and private industry. We have a role to play. We all have a role to play to achieve true sustainability. It is not a nice to have. It is not a problem. It is our greatest opportunity
Yeah.
Yes.
that we have to solve this sustainability problem. Is decarbonization highest priority? But Professor Ben, to your point, is much more deeper than decarbonization.
Yeah.
Is going beyond that. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank you.
today,
Thank
and
you.
we're looking forward to do that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cheers.
Let's do it. Cheers.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time I engage a chef.
Yeah.
I always want to talk to chef.
That's a great idea. We supply all the chillers and fire panels and all that visualization and all these three buildings. So one day I'd love to host you again in our office, and we will show our energy center as well. Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you. I know it was a long time, and I appreciate the patience.